The air in Department 42 smelled like old paper and desperate lies. It's a specific scent, stale, heavy, and cold. I sat there, hands folded on the scarred oak table, watching the woman I'd spent 12 years with turn into a stranger in real time. Julianne didn't look at me. She looked at the judge, her posture perfect, her face a mask of practiced corporate vulnerability. She was the CEO of Verity Tech, a company worth 9 figures, and I was the man who had stayed home to make sure she had a life to come back to. "He's a gold digger, Your Honor," she said. Her voice didn't tremble. It was the same tone she used to fire a middle manager. The marriage was a calculation for him. He saw an ascending trajectory and he tethered himself to it. Beside her, Simon Vance leaned back. He was her lead counsel, a man who charged $1,000 an hour to destroy lives. He was also the man Julianne had been seeing for the last 6 months behind my back. He didn't say a word. He just nodded, a slow, rhythmic motion that felt like a hammer hitting a nail. He looked at me then, just a flick of the eyes, and smiled. It wasn't a wide grin. It was the smile of a man who had already won. I didn't argue. Not yet. I just looked at the scuff on my shoe and wondered when the person I loved had died, and when this monster had taken her place. Before I continue, take a second to like and subscribe. These stories reach far, and the truth deserves a witness. To understand the weight of that word, gold digger, you have to go back to 2012. We were living in a 4th-floor walk-up in Astoria. The kind of place where the hallway always smelled like cabbage and the landlord only answered the phone when the rent was late. Julianne was working as a junior accounts manager at a dying firm. I was a freelance systems architect, pulling 16-hour shifts coding for startups that would inevitably fold within 6 months. We didn't have much, but we had the mapping project. At night, we'd sit at a folding card table we used as a desk. I'd be elbow-deep in Python, trying to figure out how to optimize data retrieval speeds that would eventually become the Verity engine. Julianne would sit beside me, translating my technical jargon into pitch decks. "Ethan," she'd say, leaning her head on my shoulder while the blue light of the monitor reflected in her eyes. "If we pull this off, we never look back. We'll be the ones holding the keys." I believed her. I loved her, so I gave her the keys. When the first venture capital check came in, a modest $50,000, we had a choice. We could both be founders, or we could play the game the way the Valley wanted it. Julianne was the one who suggested it. "They want a face, Ethan. They want a charismatic leader. You hate the meetings. You hate the suits. Let me be the front. I'll take the CEO title, and you stay the architect. You're the secret weapon." I agreed. I thought I was protecting my peace. In reality, I was building my own cage. For the next 5 years, I worked in the shadows. I designed the security protocols. I built the back-end infrastructure that allowed Verity to scale from 10 users to 10 million. But on the tax returns, on the press releases, and in the origin story section of the company website, my name began to fade. I became Ethan Miller, spouse of CEO Julianne Miller. I became the man who hosted the charity dinners. The man who picked out the art for the lobby. The transition from secret weapon to house husband wasn't a cliff, it was a slow, agonizing slide. By the time Verity Tech hit its first billion-dollar valuation, the woman I married in Astoria was gone. In her place was a woman who spoke in synergies and deliverables. She started wearing clothes that cost more than our first car. She started seeing people as assets or liabilities. The first time she corrected me in public was at the Founders Gala in 2021. An investor asked me about the latency issues in the new update. I started to explain the server-side bottleneck I'd been fixing all weekend. Julianne stepped in, her hand gripping my arm just a little too tight. "Ethan is the creative soul of the house," she said, laughing. It was a practiced, hollow sound. "He leaves the technical weeds to the professionals at the office. Don't you, honey?" I looked at her, and for a second, the mask slipped. There was a coldness in her eyes I didn't recognize. It was the look of someone protecting a brand, not a partner. Then came Simon Vance. He was brought in for a high-stakes patent litigation. He was slick, expensive, and had the moral compass of a shark. He didn't just win cases, he erased opponents. I noticed the way Julianne looked at him. It wasn't just professional respect. It was envy. She wanted his ruthlessness. She wanted the way he could walk into a room and make everyone else feel small. The late nights started shortly after. I'm a technologist, I deal in patterns. When the patterns of a person's life shift, you notice the anomalies. The phone shielded from view. The sudden change in travel schedules. The scent of a cologne that wasn't mine lingering in the hallway of our penthouse. I didn't say anything. I wanted to believe I was wrong. I spent my time in my home office, a high-tech sanctuary where I still held the master administrative keys to every server Julianne thought she owned. One Tuesday evening, I was doing a routine security audit of the home network. I wasn't looking for infidelity. I was looking for vulnerabilities. I found one. Simon Vance's personal laptop had connected to our home Wi-Fi 3 times while I was supposedly away at a tech conference in Austin, a conference I had ended up canceling at the last minute because I missed my wife. I sat in the dark, watching the logs. I could see the data packets. I could see the duration of the connection. I realized then that I wasn't just being cheated on, I was being replaced. Simon wasn't just in my house, he was in my life, advising Julianne on how to divest herself of unnecessary baggage. That baggage was me. When the papers finally hit my desk, they weren't delivered by a courier. Julianne handed them to me while she was putting on her coat to head to a strategy meeting. "It's over, Ethan," she said. No tears. No long explanation. "We've outgrown each other. Simon will be handling the transition. I suggest you get a lawyer who specializes in modest settlements. Don't make this ugly. You've enjoyed a very comfortable life on my dime. Let's keep it that way. On my dime." The word stung more than the betrayal. 12 years of architecture, of sleepless nights, of being the silent foundation of her empire, and it was reduced to a handout. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I just nodded. "I understand, Julianne." She looked surprised, maybe even a little disappointed. She wanted a fight. She wanted me to grovel so she could feel justified in her cruelty. But I've always been better at math than emotions. And the math of our divorce didn't add up. I moved into a rental. It was a stark contrast to the glass and steel penthouse. It was quiet. It was humble. And it was the perfect place to begin the audit. Henderson, my lawyer, was a man of the old school. He believed in fairness. But Simon Vance believed in destruction. "They're filing a no contribution motion, Ethan," Henderson told me over a lunch of lukewarm deli sandwiches. "They're claiming that since your name isn't on the patents and you haven't held a formal title since 2014, you have no claim to the appreciation of the company's value. They're offering you $1 million and a thank you for your service." "$1 million?" I asked. Verity was worth $4 billion. Simon's argument is that you were a lifestyle spouse. A gold digger who got lucky. He's prepared to bring in witnesses, former employees, socialites, who will swear you did nothing but spend Julianne's money while she did the real work. I looked out the window at the rain. I thought about the code I'd written in Astoria. I thought about the thousands of hours I'd spent refining the algorithms that now powered the world's most efficient data mapping system. "Let them," I said. "Ethan, you don't understand. If we lose this motion, you walk away with nothing." "We won't lose," I said. "Because Simon Vance thinks he's the smartest man in the room. And Julianne thinks she's the only one who knows where the bodies are buried. But they both forgot one thing." "What's that?" Henderson asked. "I'm the one who dug the holes." I spent the next 3 months in a state of hyperfocus. I didn't go out. I didn't date. I barely slept. I wasn't looking for a smoking gun in the traditional sense. I was looking for the ghost of my own labor. When you build a system as complex as Verity's, you leave fingerprints. Not just in the code, but in the metadata. In the logs. In the way the servers talk to each other. I began by accessing my old, decommissioned laptop. Julianne thought she had it wiped and recycled by the IT department. She didn't realize that I had a mirror drive hidden in the casing of an old external backup unit that sat on a shelf in the laundry room. She never went into the laundry room. I broke the encryption on the drive at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. When the file directory finally populated, I felt a rush of adrenaline I hadn't felt in years. It was all there. Every version of the Verity engine from 1.0 to 4.5. Every commit message. Every time-stamped conversation from the Astoria days. But more importantly, I found the architecture memos. In 2016, Julianne had been panicked. A rival firm was about to sue us for patent infringement. She had sent me an email, to my private, non-company address, begging me to find a way to rewrite the core logic so it wouldn't look like the competitor's work. I had done it. I had saved the company. And in that email, she had written, "Ethan, you are the only reason this company exists. This engine is yours. I'm just the guardian. I promise I will never forget that." I saved that email into 3 different encrypted clouds. But I needed more. I needed to know why Simon Vance was so confident. Why was a man of his caliber wasting his time on a divorce case? I used the backdoor I'd mentioned, the diagnostic port. I watched the internal traffic of Verity Tech for weeks. I saw the patterns. Julianne was rushing a merger with Global Dynamics. It was a massive, career-defining deal. But there was a snag. Global Dynamics wanted a full audit of the IP ownership. They wanted to be sure that the founder actually owned what she said she owned. Simon Vance wasn't just the lawyer. He was the fixer. He was the one who was supposed to clean the IP by making sure I signed an NDA and a waiver of all future claims before the merger was finalized. Then I found the Apex Holdings documents. Apex was a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands. Its primary shareholder was a trust. I spent 4 days tracing the trust's origins. It led back to a law firm in Delaware that specialized in discrete wealth management. And the lead partner of that firm? Simon Vance's brother. The plan was brilliant in its malice. Julianne and Simon were going to settle with me for a pittance. Then, Julianne was going to sell a 15% stake in Verity to Apex Holdings at a purposely undervalued price, claiming the company was destabilized by the divorce. Once the divorce was final and I was gone, they would announce the Global Dynamics merger. The 15% stake held by Apex would triple in value overnight. They weren't just taking my marriage. They were stealing from the company's shareholders and the court itself. It was a multi-layered fraud. And they were doing it all while calling me a gold digger. I didn't show my hand. Not yet. The first hearing was a bloodbath. Simon Vance was in rare form. He presented photos of me at the club, me on the yacht, me at the gala. He made me look like a pampered poodle who had never worked a day in his life. "Your Honor," Simon said, pacing the courtroom like he owned the floorboards. "Mr. Miller has enjoyed the fruits of my client's genius for over a decade. He has lived in penthouses, traveled by private jet, and spent thousands on bespoke suits. Now, he wants to take half of the very company he did nothing to build. It's not just a legal reach, it's an insult to the American dream." The judge, a stern woman named Gable, looked at me with a mix of pity and disdain. "Mr. Miller, do you have a response to these allegations?" I stood up. I didn't look at Simon. I looked at Julianne. She was staring at her nails, looking bored. "I have no response to his characterization of my lifestyle, Your Honor," I said calmly. "I've lived well. I won't deny that. But the question isn't how I lived. The question is who built the house. And you claim you did?" Simon scoffed. "With what?" "Your creative soul." "I'd like to request a formal forensic audit of the Verity core source code," I said. "Specifically, the commit logs from June 14, 2014, through February 3, 2018. Julianne's head snapped up. Simon didn't miss a beat. "Your Honor, this is a stalling tactic. The source code is a trade secret. Mr. Miller has no technical background. A forensic audit would be a waste of the court's time and an unnecessary risk to Verity's security." "Mr. Miller has no technical background?" Judge Gable asked, looking at my file. "He's a hobbyist," Simon said dismissively. "A tinkerer." "I see," the judge said. "Motion for audit denied at this time. We will proceed with the asset distribution based on the current ownership filings." Simon turned to me and winked. It was the wink that sealed his fate. He thought he had won because he had controlled the narrative. He didn't realize that in the world of data, the narrative is just noise. The truth is in the signal. That night, I went back to my rental. I didn't feel defeated. I felt ready. I knew they were going to move fast now. They wanted to close the deal with Global Dynamics before I could find another way to disrupt them. I could see the activity on the company servers spiking. They were preparing the data room for the merger auditors. They were moving files. They were cleaning the directories. I watched as a user named jvance_admin, Simon's brother's credentials, likely, began moving large blocks of encrypted data to an external server. They were moving the Apex transaction records. I didn't block them. I did something much more effective. I tagged the data. I wrote a small piece of script, a tracer, and injected it into the file stream. Wherever those files went, they would leave a digital breadcrumb trail that led directly back to Simon Vance's personal office server. Then, I went back to the Astoria files. I found a specific piece of code I had written in 2013. It was a logic bomb, but not the kind that destroys things. It was a verification routine. I had built it into the very foundation of the Verity engine. It was a sequence of prime numbers that, when triggered, would display a hidden copyright string in the software's metadata. I had put it there because, even back then, I was a little paranoid. I wanted to be able to prove the code was mine if anyone ever tried to steal it. The copyright string didn't say Verity Tech. It didn't say Julianne Miller. It said, property of Ethan Miller. All rights reserved. July 12, 2013. I checked the current version of Verity's software. The one being used by millions of people. The one being sold to Global Dynamics for $4 billion. The logic bomb was still there. Julianne's professional developers had never found it. They had built the entire empire on top of a foundation that still bore my name. But I still needed more leverage. I needed to break Simon Vance. I began looking into Simon's other clients. A man like that doesn't just have one discrete deal going. He has dozens. I found a connection between Simon and a rival tech firm that Verity had sued 2 years ago. Simon had been Julianne's lead counsel in that suit. We had won $10 million. But I found a record of a consulting fee paid by that rival firm to a shell company owned by Simon Vance's wife just 3 days after the settlement was reached. Simon had taken a bribe to settle for less than the case was worth. He had betrayed Julianne long before he had met me. He wasn't her ally. He was a parasite who had found a bigger host. I sat back in my chair, the sun beginning to rise over the city. I had the code. I had the fraud. I had the betrayal. Now, I just needed the right moment to pull the trigger. I didn't call Henderson. I didn't call the police. I waited for the settlement conference. It was held in the Verity boardroom. A room I had designed. The table was Italian marble. The chairs were ergonomic masterpieces. The view was of the entire Manhattan skyline. Julianne sat at the head of the table. She looked like a queen. Simon sat to her right, his briefcase open, his eyes full of predatory intent. "We've revised our offer," Simon said, sliding a document across the marble. $2 million. But we've added a disparagement clause. If you ever speak to the press, if you ever mention Julianne's name in a negative light, you forfeit everything. You become a ghost, Ethan. It's what you're best at, after all. Julianne didn't even look at me. She was looking at a mock-up of the merger announcement on her tablet. "I have a counteroffer," I said. Simon laughed. "Ethan, we've been over this. You have no leverage. You have no standing. You're lucky we're giving you anything at all." "I think you should look at the screen on the wall," I said. I tapped a command into my phone. The massive 90-inch monitor at the end of the room flickered to life. It wasn't a pitch deck. It was a live view of the Verity source code. "What is this?" Julianne asked, her voice sharp. "How do you have access to this?" "I never left, Julianne," I said. "I built the locks. Did you really think I didn't keep a key?" I scrolled down to the core logic layer. I entered a 16-digit hexadecimal code. The screen blinked. The complex lines of code vanished, replaced by a single block of text in bright red. Property of Ethan Miller. All rights reserved. July 12, 2013. That's a trick, Simon hissed. That's a hack. You're tampering with company property. It's not company property, Simon, I said. This is the master engine. The one that every other piece of Verity software relies on. And as you can see, the copyright predates the incorporation of Verity Tech by 18 months. I didn't build this for the company. I built it for myself. I merely loaned it to the company. A loan that I am now calling in. Julianne was staring at the red text. She knew. She remembered that night in Astoria. She remembered me showing her that exact string of text as a joke. Ethan, she whispered. Stop this. I'm not done, I said. I swiped my phone again. The screen changed. Now it showed the Apex Holdings documents. It showed the wire transfers. It showed the connection to Simon's brother. And then there's this, I said. A little something for the SEC. It seems the CEO and her counsel are conspiring to defraud the Global Dynamics auditors by hiding a 15% stake in a shell company. That's called market manipulation and insider trading. I believe the minimum sentence is 10 years. Simon stood up, his face flushed. You have no proof of where those documents came from. You stole them. Actually, I said, they were sent to me. By an anonymous whistleblower. It's amazing what people will give you when they realize you're the one who can actually protect their data. I looked at Julianne. Simon didn't just betray me, Jules. He betrayed you. Check the consulting fees from the Zephyr Corp case. He took a $2 million kickback to settle that case early. He's been bleeding you dry for years. Julianne turned to Simon. The look on her face wasn't anger. It was a terrifying, cold realization. The secret weapon had just fired. The room was silent for a long time. The hum of the air conditioning seemed deafening. What do you want? Julianne asked. Her voice was hollow. The Queen was gone. I want what's mine, I said. I want 50% of the merger payout. I want a full, public admission that I am the sole architect of the Verity engine. And I want Simon Vance removed from this building, this case, and your life. Immediately. That's half the company, Simon stammered. You can't. I can, I said. And I will. Because if I don't get it, I hit delete on the master server. And since I'm the only one who knows the recovery protocols for the 2013 logic bomb, Verity Tech becomes a billion-dollar pile of junk before the market closes. You destroy it all? Julianne asked. I built it in a studio apartment with a leaky radiator, Julianne, I said. I'm not afraid of starting over. Are you? She looked at the city. She looked at the marble table. She looked at the life she had built on my back. Get out, Simon, she said. Julianne, he's bluffing. Get out, she screamed. Simon Vance gathered his things in a panicked blur. He didn't look like a shark anymore. He looked like a man who had just seen the bottom of the ocean. When the door closed, it was just the two of us. Was it worth it? She asked. All of this? The secrets? The waiting? I didn't want this, Julianne, I said. I just wanted to be your partner. But you decided that being a CEO was more important than being a wife. And you decided that I was a liability. I thought I was protecting us, she whispered. No, I said. You were protecting yourself. There's a difference. I stood up and walked to the door. My lawyer will send over the new settlement papers this afternoon, I said. Sign them, and I'll give you the recovery keys. The merger can go through. You can have your billions. You can have your fame. But you'll never be able to look at that code again without seeing my name. I walked out of the boardroom. I walked past the assistants, past the security, and out into the New York air. It was a gray day. It was raining. And for the first time in 12 years, I felt like I could breathe. The settlement took weeks of grueling legal maneuvering. Without Simon Vance, Julianne's defense crumbled. She tried to hire a new firm, but word had already leaked. The whistleblower information I had teased wasn't just a threat, it was a reality. I didn't want to destroy her. Not completely. I just wanted the truth to be the final record. The Global Dynamics merger went through, but with a massive adjustment. The public announcement included a special section: Verity Tech acknowledges the foundational contributions of Ethan Miller, the lead architect and creator of the Verity engine. Mr. Miller's intellectual property has been officially integrated into the merger at a valuation of $2 billion. The world was shocked. The house husband was a billionaire. The gold digger was the genius. I watched the news from a small house I bought in the mountains of Vermont. No glass walls. No marble tables. Just wood, stone, and silence. Julianne stayed on as CEO for another year, but the magic was gone. The developers knew. The board knew. Every time she stood up to give a speech about vision, everyone in the room knew whose vision it really was. She resigned 6 months ago, citing personal reasons. I heard she's living in Europe now. Trying to find a new front. I wish her luck. I really do. Because once you've betrayed the person who built your foundation, you'll never feel safe in any house you build again. As for me, I'm still coding. But I'm not building engines for other people anymore. I'm building something for myself. Something quiet. Something honest. I sit on my porch sometimes and look at the trees. I think about the card table in Astoria. I think about the girl who used to lean on my shoulder and dream of holding the keys. I still have the keys. But I've realized that the most important thing isn't the lock you can open. It's the door you're willing to walk through. People ask me if I feel satisfied. They want to hear about the thrill of the revenge. They want to know if the money makes the betrayal hurt less. The truth is, revenge is a cold meal. It fills you up, but it doesn't warm you. I won. I have more money than I could ever spend. I have my reputation. I have the victory. But I also have the memory of a woman I loved turning into a monster. I have the memory of 12 years. Of my life being used as a weapon against me. Victory doesn't erase the past. It just clarifies it. I learned that in the end, we are all just data points in our own lives. We can be manipulated, we can be erased, we can be overwritten. But if you keep your own logs, if you stay true to the core logic of who you are, no one can ever truly delete you. I'm Ethan Miller. I'm an architect. I'm a survivor. And I am no one's passenger. Was the outcome justified? What would you have done differently? If you've ever been the one in the shadows, building something for someone who didn't deserve it, tell me. Let's talk about it. Because the only way to break the cycle of betrayal is to bring it into the light. Subscribe for more stories from the edge of the truth. Share this with someone who needs to know that the ghost always has the last word. Stay sharp.